I don't think my father was very philosophical. I kind of remember him just wanting to do something to help people. I think he felt the city had a lot of potential and the city's going to change, it's going to grow. We could either try to control it the best we can to make the best city or just sit back and watch things happen.
When the Japanese businesses first came, Honda was at the end of Gardena Boulevard. Nissan and the rest, they all had little branches nearby. I'm sure they would have located in Gardena if there were land available. But most of the land was available in the industrial section of Torrance, which happens to be off of 190th. And in that area, they were able to establish their formal structures and headquarters and businesses. But the reason they came originally was that Gardena provided institutional infrastructure, schools, markets, housing, educational systems in terms of Japanese language for their children, as well as cultural events. And it became really like another prefecture of Japan, but located in the United States.
The opposition was so much still going on as far as other locations are concerned, especially the fact that the input of Japanese imports taking jobs from the Americans, so they needed to be in an area where they were welcome.
I'm still amazed that Toyota overtook General Motors. I never thought it would happen in a million years. I mean, Detroit and Flint was General Motors. The General Motors lived and died, Flint and Detroit lived and died. And we just couldn't, you know, Toyota's never going to catch up. Kia, what the hell is that? Honda? Honda? That's the name of John Wayne movie. Big Honcho or something. We didn't know. Now, what am I driving? Honda.
I was involved with the beginning of the Toyota company because I was the first auditors. The first automobile, the Toyota, was a passenger car, and it didn't have the power, no guts. So I told the staff there, the management, I says, I bought one of your Toyotas for my wife, and she drives the kids around, and I won't have her go on the freeway because you can't gas that up to get the speed up. Eventually, you can roll it up, but you gotta keep pressing the accelerator, and I says, it's too dangerous. I got her out of that Toyota because it's not a car for Southern California. They were smart in cutting out the sales. And then the next car that came out with the Corona, a smaller car, more power, and that hit the market and sold. They found out in their research that whatever hit Southern California and could sell, you could sell throughout the country. Southern Cal was a market to prove it.
The company that I helped more than any other was Honda Company. They would bring their cars in on the ship, and they said, well, we will unload. As soon as we unload, we need things to load up right away. We don't want the ships waiting there, but we got to go back to Japan and pick up more of our Hondas and bring them here. They had no manufacturing here. What I did is I started to put in cattle. So I would get cattle from all through Montana, Wyoming, everywhere. As soon as the ship was unloaded and the Hondas were unloaded, we could just shoo the cattle on. So Honda then became the biggest beef importers and meat producers in Japan. Well, what happened is that when they cleaned these ships in Japan, Honda, not knowing it, became the biggest fertilizer company in Japan.
I think a lot of people had helped the Japanese companies coming over here figure out how our society works. And I think that was a great help to them. And I remember back in the 60s and 70s, my father helped a lot of these companies because he had the ability to not only speak the language, but to read and write the language. He was able to help a lot of these people through his real estate business find locations. And of course, my dad, just liking Gardena, he was able to explain to them the pluses of the South Bay.
The banks in Gardena, when I was the mayor, had $1 billion on deposit, which is far more than the city of Torrance, 4 times our size. Why? Because you had a Honda, you had the Toyota, not just the dealerships, you had the headquarters buildings.
Whether it's Sumitomo Bank, as well as Mitsubishi Bank and others, those kinds of banks came because the business were here.
Bank of Tokyo came in, and that was rather strange. Of course, again, when you're talking to me, I have World War II memories. I remember a lady called up on the telephone once and was taking a survey about Mitsubishi and Sony and what kind of television set do you have and everything else. And she said something about Mitsubishi, and I told her, I said, good thing I didn't have the FBI after me. Last time I heard of Mitsubishi, I would have shot at it with my .50 caliber because we were, we had airplane recognition, and we were taught, how to recognize at 1/100th of a second a Mitsubishi and a zero and a this and a that. Well, in the 50s and 60s and maybe early 70s, it was very few Asian signs, and then 70s kind of saw both signs, and then in the 80s and 90s, a lot of Asian signs without any accompanying English signs.
I think it probably was some of this business about wanting to become more American, get away from this Second World War attitude. I don't think anybody would have wanted to put up a sign in Japanese in the first 10 or 15 years after the Second World War.
I believe a lot of Niseis did feel like second-class citizens. I remember when I was growing up that they wanted to be as American as possible. That's why culturally, I think it hurt a lot of Japanese Americans, because many third-generation people don't speak the language at all. Where I think if you look at other cultures, the language and more the culture and customs is carried through to the fourth, fifth generation. And the Japanese American culture has assimilated into American society at a much faster rate.
In 1972, Reagan decided to run for governor of California. After he got elected, he called me one day and he says, Paul, the assemblyman in your district passed away, and I'm going to have a special election to fill that seat. Now, knowing that you're a Republican in the Democratic area, I'd like to have you run. He came down and raised money for me and campaigned for me, and as a result, I was elected to the assembly seat in 1973. I was speaking on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce up in Sacramento, and a lady came out from the kitchen and said, "You have a call from Washington, D.C." It was Joan Bernstein, and she was running a committee called the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. And she says, "Mr. Bannai, there's a lot of people said that you might be able to help us." So I says, "Joan, I will sign up to be the executive director to help you get the hearings underway." And so I feel that I did do something in my lifetime to try to help all of us who were put into camp. And with reparations and an apology, that was a good thing.